It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm following in some elements things that Professor Weisbord just mentioned. I'm taking them a bit to a different direction, but I think there are also areas of agreement. So the title I've given to this talk is Normative Design, from Safe City to Communal Solidarity. And here you have a MRI scan of brain of a criminal, and you'd think, if you're looking at it, okay, so if we can identify criminals according to their brain scan, maybe all we need in terms of innovation in policing is simply MRI scanning. But what's underneath this is actually the understanding that what we see here is a result of social relationships, of personal history, of biography, of family, and all these kind of things that change us out also physically and mentally. And I think that's the interesting thing that we see in today's studies in neurocriminology. Here's an application that is now used in China, when they have a software that supposedly identify your look before you're committing a crime, right? The way they defined a look before you're stealing something from a shop. And this should be like kind of an AI crime prevention, which is another kind of example of that. And all that brings us to this Minority Report dilemma, this film from the 2000s, which really posed the question, what is this idea of crime prevention and how to think about it? And many times it results in this: surveillance communities, cameras, all kinds of smart cities, gadgets, and so on. And my suggestion is to move away from this and to look for the solution elsewhere. So these approaches move away from social responsibility toward the individual, from the well-being of communities to dangerous persons, from healthy and moral society to discipline and regulation. Instead, what I would like to propose, criminology as social design, focuses on the relation between social issues behind the transgression. Crime often tells us a story of how things are, but also as they could be. And let me start with an example too that would be very well known to my UK colleagues here, mugging. So this is a series of events. Here is one example from November 1972, where a person was beaten by young kids, kicked him, hit him with a brick. And this in short time became a big event and a scandal. It got this name, mugging. Such crime stories made headlines and perceived as a threat to the public safety. They called for firm action. The result was increased policing and increase of legal measures, yet they have not given the desired results. And here comes the hero of my talk here, of course, Stuart Hall and his wonderful study, Policing the Crisis, 1978. And in a nutshell, what I'm going to propose is taking seriously what he then suggested in his study and do a kind of technological and in design thinking adding to the kind of suggestions he put forward. So just to give you a sense of what his argument is about, so he would say, you cannot solve a social crisis by policing. If what we see in this mugging is not simply criminality in different hotspots, what we see is a social disintegration, which also connects to the thinking of Emil Durkheim and other thinkers. So let me just read: instead of law enforcement to situate mugging systematically at this level of analysis in relation to social policies, social institution, trust, legitimation, participation, the elements which prevent disintegration and make the crisis manageable. So Hall's social analysis suggested that mugging is not an objective description of events, but a reaction to it, what he defined as moral panic. What is behind it is not a lack of discipline, but a social anomy this is exactly the term coined by Durkheim. So it's that something in the community fails to function. For many communities, modernism and development mean social disintegration and atomization. We see that, for example, in what we see in different Arab communities in Israel today, suffering from high rates of crime. And the reason behind it, I think I could argue with Paul and with Durkheim, it's a classical sense of anomy. The result in poor neighborhoods is that the failures of the state turn into conflict between immigrants and local groups, and also that we can see in south of Tel Aviv or in other places, right? So there was one issue, which is a social crisis, which is then translated into criminality, which is then brings in the police, bring in the media, bring in all kinds of other stuff. Here is this beautiful sketch by Hall, and you can see here the pattern, the model, how one element shapes or influences the other. And this is, if I'm a designer, that is where I would like to intervene, right? To stop this spiral, to intervene in different phases or in different places and change this interaction. So we're not talking, in my understanding or in my suggestion here, design in terms of products, in design in terms of, I don't know, some new gadgets. We're talking about how design could be social design and provide a different form of interactions between these different components. Here is a short example, which I think can be helpful for this. I don't know, I can't show it. So it's a short film, which I'm not able to play it. So I'm just going to tell you what's in it. So it shows a police in the US running after a black young guy, and the policeman is shouting him stop. He doesn't stop. The police shoots him. He is dead. And the question that I think this raises is, why did this young boy didn't stop? A policeman calls you stop, just stop, right? So here is this explanation going back to where I took off from Stuart Hall. For the young boy, policeman is an enemy. He runs away as he calls him. The police represent not security, but an unjust and threatening world. It is not the mind but the mindset, and it is not the police as such, but rather what it stands for. So if we're thinking that way, we're thinking about the social fabric. We're talking about relations between different populations and different social and ethnic groups. We are understanding that criminality is telling us a story of the relationships, a story of the way people perceive the society at large. So as a schoolmaster told the police chief recently here in Israel, you can arrest all my pupils now, I offer them nothing but despair. So if that's what the principal, what a headmaster says to you, then you understand that you have a society in crisis, but this crisis has to do with mindset, with interactions, with the ability to consolidate communities around some shared understanding of goals. So let me move very quickly to some positive examples. And here I'm quoting from a very good book by Justin McGurk, Radical Cities. And he explores exactly how some project in very poor neighborhoods in Latin America were able to make a big difference precisely along these lines. So here's a quote: where there's fear, you get fragmented society. The fear and violence destroy any kind of citizenship, any working together. There are no citizens living there, only individuals surviving. Save yourself. So everyone is resigned to living in their place, and public space is basically destroyed as a site of reunion for communities. So if we understand that as a problem, then we can then transform the public spaces and turn them not simply no longer a hotspot, but hotspots in the positive sense. Here's another important quote from Stuart Hall: "To blame actions of individuals within a given historical structure without taking the structure itself into account is an easy and familiar way of exercising moral conscience without bearing any of its cost. It is the last refuge of liberalism." And here the picture also shows you that if we are not understanding we are colorblind and we don't do any social analysis, then we fall short in changing the relationship within the community. Here's another example from McGuirk. We had a specific team that combined architects, urbanists, social workers, communication people, lawyers, and leaders, who was the social manager for that area in Santo Domingo. This kind of collective aspiration raising is one of the most sensitive aspects of participating design, because it creates an expectations among the community. So here is how you empower a community and help them through different understanding of design to solve their own problem. You don't need to solve their problem. You need to facilitate a problem-solving process. So I'm closely coming to my summary. So policing as normative design, police as a role in promoting social integration and enhancing solidarity. I'm in full agreement with what Professor Weisberger said about it. There are policing strategies that are that serve this purpose: communal policing, restorative justice, therapeutic jurisprudence, and so on. Wonderful practices. The design challenge is how these strategies and practices could be linked to new methods and technologies supporting police as social designer, as social actors. And I'm finishing with this beautiful passage because I think that design and philosophy are closely connected than one usually thinks. So this is an excellent book by Scott Shapiro. He's a philosopher of jurisprudence, and he writes, rules of legal systems are plans. Their function is to structure legal activities so that participants can work together and thereby achieve goods and realize values that would otherwise be unattainable. The question of whether a body has legal power is never one of its moral legitimacy. It is a question of whether the relevant officials of that system accept a plan that authorizes and requires deference to that body. So we're talking about how plan and design thinking is not simply a method, right? It is a way we understand what is law, how is that connected to normativity, how is that connected to solidarity, how is that helping us coping with anomaly. So making the unimaginable visible. Policing is a verb. It is about connections between policies and communal life, coherence to the social structure. Trust is essential. Crime is a social indicator, a symptom of a failure of design. It is not only a legal, but always primarily a normative question. Solidarity has to do with the ability to plan and design futures. Hostility, fear, and anomy are often the result of a blocked horizon. They lead to disintegration. Normative design requires creativity, dialogue, education, and practice. I stop here, and I thank you very much.